Thank you, Tim, and thanks everyone for staying the course. I always like to sit in the sessions in these conferences to get some advice, and I must say that last little round was just about sort of summed it up. So we have advice to focus on the unicorns and advice not to focus on the unicorns. So we'll have to have a vote at the end of it. Listen, I'm very grateful for the invitation. I want to say a few words about the industrial strategy, but I hope we'll have time, even at this late hour in the day, for me to, in effect, pick your brains a bit through your questions and points, to have the privilege of this audience, crucial as you are, not just to the present, but the future of the UK economy. I'm very keen to make sure that I leave with a good understanding of the concerns that you have and the suggestions that you might have for government. But let me say a bit about the industrial strategy. And Tim correctly anticipated that I was rather surprised when I saw the brochure and the branding. It is the first time I've spoken at a Soviet-themed event, and if anyone had ever told me it would be the BVCA that would be hosting a Soviet-themed event, I thought I would never have believed it. But I do appreciate the theme of revolution. It is apt, and leaving aside the questions of Brexit, it is apparent that we are engaged in economic terms a revolutionary time. This morning I was in the Olympic Park launching our clean growth strategy, and the energy transformation, a revolution you could call it, is very palpable. In researching what I had to say there, I was reflecting on the fact that in 1882, 135 years ago, the world's first coal-fired power station, electric power station, opened at 57 Holborn Viaduct. It generated 93 kilowatts of electricity, and it powered 1,000 street lamps. 6 months ago, we had in the UK our first day of generating electricity without coal since the opening of that power station at the Holborn Viaduct 135 years ago. We are on a new revolution in energy, in which we are moving, and the world is moving, to clean energy just as surely as the age of fossil fuel powered energy characterized much of the last 135 years. Mobility as well. Many people here will be invested in, again, the mobility transition that is replacing cars and vehicles that were predominantly powered by fossil fuels for the last 100 years, or interestingly enough, London cabs, as many of you know, before petrol engines and diesel engines came into being, were electric powered. And we are having, in that sense, a strict revolution, a turn of the wheel back to where it was, because most of the auto companies expect their vehicles, at the latest by 2040, to be all electric, or certainly ultra-low emission. And it goes without saying that the autonomous components of that, the driverless cars and the technologies associated with, are a huge transition, a revolution there. I could add in other sectors, automation, AI, the analysis and application of big data, the healthcare transitions that come from genomics and the other breakthroughs that are being taken place. So the revolutionary theme is, I can see, apt for this conference, and I think it is a good backdrop to an industrial strategy. Notwithstanding what was said in the just earlier about picking winners, there are some connotations in this country. Colleagues will know that the previous history of industrial strategy, at least in the 1970s, was usually about, I think it's probably fair to say, attempts to pick winners that generally turned out to be result in picking losers and shoveling large amounts of taxpayers' funds into them. That is not the purpose of the industrial strategy that we are embarked on. Rather the reverse. It seems to me that actually this conference wouldn't exist were it not for the fact that the reputation justified of the UK economy is of a place of contestability, of entry, of competition, where there isn't, and certainly shouldn't be, any particular privilege attached to incumbency. And it seems to me that reputation in this revolutionary world of being a place where life is uncomfortable for incumbents, and certainly governments shouldn't be feather bedding them, is very important indeed. But I'll say a little more about what we are proposing as the foundations of our industrial strategy. But I just wanted to say to this group one thing before I do that. I'm very conscious that amongst the upheavals we've had in recent years and in the last 12 months has been a general election in which I think it is fair to observe the role of the economy and enterprise and business didn't feature terribly prominently. I think that was something that I regret because I think if you reflect on the success of the British economy over the last 7 years, then frankly, it's not too much of an exaggeration to say that the government's record is your record. The strength of the economy, whether it's in growth, whether it's in job creation, whether it's in the revolution that consumers have experienced in terms of the products and services they consume, is down to business, and it's down specifically to investors in business. It wouldn't have happened, it can't be willed by the state, it can't be willed by government. And I think particular kudos is owed to those investors who put their own money and those of their partners into risky ventures. 27 billion pounds, I think, has been invested over the last 5 years by UK-based VC and private equity houses. And without that, we wouldn't have had the economy that we do. And in my view, the implications of that are completely far-reaching in that you cannot have a successful country, you cannot have a successful society, let alone a successful economy, without flourishing businesses, and that requires, flourishing businesses require entrepreneurial initiative and investment. So it is overdue from the election campaign, but I think some small restitution of the credit that you were due during those public debates, I think it's important to put on record at this event. So why an industrial strategy? Well, it seems to me that given the transitions, given the challenges, given the revolutions, only some of which I've described, it is not an unreasonable thing. In fact, I think it's a necessary and prudent thing to try to reflect on what implications those challenges have for us as an economy, and to check that we are ready and prepared for them. Any good strategy, of course, should involve building on the strengths that you have, and the last session made some suggestions and some recommendations as to what constitutes UK strengths. But it is the case, just as it is with the companies and the businesses that you invest in, that you can't take those strengths for granted. There are many other countries around the world that eye our leadership in many areas and are studying very carefully the conditions that created that success with a view to applying them and out-competing us. And so I think it would be a dereliction of duty not to have a clear view as to what needs to be done to build on those strengths. I can mention just a few of them. The entrepreneurial environment, carefully put together over many years, making sure that we are open to investment, and not only investment, but to international talent is a great feature of this country, a great feature of this city. And if you undermine that, you undermine the future health of the economy as well as business. So you should be clear-sighted about the need to maintain that. If you look at our reputation for research and development and innovation, we have some of the world's very best universities, very best scientists, more Nobel Prize winners famously than any nation on earth apart from the United States. But there are other countries that are targeting increased investment in research and development. It seems to me that we should do too, and that we should be creating the institutions of the future in that. It's not just about manufacturing. Sometimes people consider the words industrial and industrial strategy and consider that this is a a strategy for manufacturing, if you're to reflect on the future of the British economy, in which 80% of our value added comes from services, it is absolutely essential that we, again, are clear-sighted in terms of what is needed for our services sector to continue to thrive. And that has implications for Brexit and our negotiations there, but also into to the very beneficial ecology of mutually supportive professional practice and professional advice, for example, that is available in such a deep pool in London. So it seems to me to think about the future, think about your strengths, and to make sure that you are addressing them is not only something that is, if I can put it this way, not unconservative, but actually is absolutely prudent to do. And it seems to me in any of the businesses in which you invest, if you were to ask any of the management, what's your strategy for the future? What are your plans for the future? If they answered, well, we don't really have one, we thought we'd play it by ear and just see how things go, I dare say that you would be unimpressed. So that is the purpose of our industrial strategy, not to subsidize, not to protect, not to choose even particular companies or particular businesses, but to make sure that the business environment is as well primed as it can be for the future. Any strategy also has to engage with the challenges that a business or an economy faces. And I think it is fair to say that we do have, for all our strengths and all our successes that I've touched on, we do have some big challenges as well. One of those is familiar to everyone in this room, is becoming more high profile than it has been in recent years, which is, you might call, a productivity challenge, in which for all of the excellence of this place of London, all of the talent that we have in our most high-performing businesses, research institutions, universities, and the like, we still have a level of productivity in this country that is considerably below our competitors, whether that's France and Germany across the Channel, or the United States and other countries around the world. And it seems to me that if you want to be prosperous as a country, if you want to pay yourselves well, then you can only do that on the basis of being productive. You can't eat into the resources that you have if you're not replenishing them. This applies particularly to the distribution of productivity across the country. We are standing in the middle of one of the most productive places on the planet, and one of the most prosperous places on the planet. But not very far from here, within 100 miles of here, there are some of the lowest performing in terms of productivity places in Northern Europe, and with that, some of the poorest places in Northern Europe. That seems to me to be a lost opportunity. If you consider the fact that in the United Kingdom, of the 8 biggest cities outside the capital, only one has a productivity per head, a GVA per head, that exceeds the national average. The city is Bristol. In Germany, every single one of the cities outside the capital, notwithstanding the surge in entrepreneurialism in Berlin, every single one of the 8 biggest German cities outside Berlin has a GVA per head above the national average and is dragging that national average higher. Only one out of the 8 in the UK. In France and Italy, it's about 6 or 7 out of the 8. So there is a challenge, but a big opportunity for us to make better use of the latent talent that there is in other parts of the country. So what do we need to do to achieve that? Well, 5 brief points that I will make. First of all, the business environment is absolutely crucial. We will prosper on the basis of having a deserved reputation for being a place where businesses can be founded, they can grow, they can seize opportunities. And it's absolutely essential that we maintain that. We must make sure that finance is available. I know, and just hearing from the previous session, that the available funding at the moment has been pretty buoyant. But you will know that this is not evenly distributed across the country. I think the BVCA's own submission to our consultation on the industrial strategy noted the concentration of private equity and VC investment in London and in the southeast. And so it is a challenge to make that funding available more broadly. Government, I think, can play a role in this. The British Business Bank has been established to help with this. I know that there are concerns about the EIF and recent decisions and policies that have been taken there that have been harmful to the flow of funds on which many businesses have relied, and that is something that is absolutely on our agenda and that we need to address and will do so. The role, particularly in later rounds of funding and scaling up businesses, again, we're not as good as our competitors there, especially in the Valley and other parts of the United States. It seems to me that we need to be, in terms of the business environment, agile in regulation. We're never going to be a jurisdiction that has low standards. That's not where we should compete. In an uncertain world, people come to the UK and invest in the UK because they can have confidence in it and know that funds are in a context of high standards of governance. And that applies to in product areas as well. But it's important that regulation should be agile and keep up and sometimes be ahead of the curve. I'll give one example of this. I mentioned the great transition in mobility to autonomous vehicles. We have a bill that is currently through Parliament, about to go through Parliament, the Autonomous Electric Vehicles Bill, which will establish in this country a regulatory environment that can provide certainty and confidence for the development, testing, and use of autonomous vehicles that is, I think, positions us well to be a confident place in which people can invest and can be a test bed. I think it's the same in financial services. We want to make sure, whether it's fintech or other areas, that actually our institutions are rapid and agile enough to provide the right regulatory environment that innovations can take place. And at the risk of repeating myself, to maintain a competition regime that is positively pro-competition, encouraging of competition, and that we don't restrict takeovers, and that we are explicitly open to flows of funds from outside the UK, incredibly important too. And I would add the tax environment to the business environment as well. So very important policies that can make our business environment attractive and conducive to growth and to the prosperity of the companies and businesses in which you invest, or if you get them wrong, they can cede our advantage, or at least not take the opportunities. Another area of strategic challenge that we need to address is this area of ideas and innovation. As I say, our universities and research institutions are some of the best in the world. In proposing an industrial strategy, we immediately saw the need to make sure that the flow of funds into our research institutions is enhanced. So last November, we secured an extra £2 billion a year, the biggest increase in R&D funding that we've had in this country for 40 years. And applying it in ways that are strategic and make connections between institutions, and actually relationships was part of one of the recommendations to government here. You're bringing people together to create institutions in which research and development and application can be made. is incredibly important. Let me give an example of the Faraday Battery Institute that we are creating, working with the automotive sector, the many firms in the energy sector, to advance the research that takes place in this country in the next generation of batteries, and applying them in terms of the manufacturing capacity for batteries, both for electric vehicles but also for energy storage, to clearly important areas for the future. Take another example. If anyone goes to Coventry, to Warwick University, you will see almost completed now the National Automotive Innovation Centre, bringing together many big players in the auto sector, but also with places for startups to be able to access specialist research skills there in an environment that is literally architecturally designed to promote collaboration. Other areas in life sciences, many of you know the great Sir John Bell, who is leading the development of a sector deal, bringing together all of the life sciences and pharma players in this country to make sure that we have the right regulatory environment and the right institutions to capitalize on our strengths there. As I said earlier, it's not just about manufacturing. Creative industries, again, one of our particular strengths. So making sure that in many different respects we are enhancing our reputation for being a place of ideas and innovation is something that we intend to do as part of our industrial strategy. Another pillar of it, and it was, I think it was Gabriel that mentioned it, talent. You can have the ideas, you can have a good business environment, but you need the people to be able to apply them, to work in the areas of opportunity. We, again, to be candid, do not have the level of skills, particularly technical skills, that our competitors have. We need to have it. We need to have a transformation in the level of technical education that is available. Wherever I go in the country, north, south, east and west, I meet companies time and time again who say that their principal constraint in being able to fulfill current order books, let alone future ones, is the availability of skills to be able to access them. Already we've proposed new institutes of technology located in our principal cities, to have, for example, a ceramics institute in Stoke-on-Trent, and the potteries seems to me to have the prospects of capitalizing on an area of strength and opportunity, and make sure that people have the skills that they need to address that. There is some positive progress here. Those of you that follow, perhaps because they've got sons or daughters going through the trauma of exam results in the summer, would have known that this year, this August, in terms of the A-level exam results, more people took A-levels in maths and sciences than at any time since records began in this country. And there is a big uptake, as many of you know, in engineering degrees at university. So there is a revival of interest, particularly in STEM subjects. I'll just make two other quick points. Infrastructure. If you're going to be productive as an economy, that has to rest on infrastructure that is adequate to the task, whether that is physical infrastructure, roads, railways, airports, energy networks, very importantly, or digital networks, which, again, if I travel the country, is a consistent theme, is often inadequate to the task that is required. And I would add to infrastructure what you might term the soft infrastructure of our legal framework, of our sort of network of professional advice that makes this country a place that people do choose to come with confidence. And finally, if I could just mention the importance of place. Central government for many decades has sort of peered out of London SW1 and regarded the country as being pretty homogenous. Policies have always been national. But it's my observation, my contention, perhaps someone born and bred in Middlesbrough in the northeast, I might who've sort of grown up with this perspective, that actually you don't really know what is needed in a place if you don't have the experience of living, working, or doing business there. And I think the cities that have fallen behind the national average in the way that I described, I think part of that is associated with a stripping out over many years of the potential for economic leadership there. Yeah, if you take the city of Birmingham, Joseph Chamberlain, almost a byword for the engagement of a businessman going into civic life and transforming that city. That has been certainly exceptional in recent decades. But through some of the work that we've been doing, creating these city deals, these devolution deals we now have, take the West Midlands in Andy Street, someone who was the MD, as many of you will know, of John Lewis for many years, now very clearly with a mandate across the whole of the West Midlands to bring a commercial and economic perspective to the leadership of that very important area. But we've got much further to go, and it's a big part of our industrial strategy. So we've consulted on some of these proposals and elements. Grateful to the BVCA for a very comprehensive submission to that. We'll be responding during the weeks ahead with a white paper. But as any strategy, the strategies of the businesses in which you invest, it's not the piece of paper, it's not the slide pack that constitutes the strategy. It's putting it into practice. It's absolutely essential that in all of these respects, whether it's skills and talent, whether it's investment in innovation, whether it's in infrastructure, whether it's in place, that we apply it consistently over all policy areas over a sustained period. Sometimes documents are produced by governments that have a pretty short shelf life. My view is that there's no point in doing that. There's no point in having a short-term strategy. It's a contradiction in terms. It's got to endure. So we need and have done it in a very collaborative way. When we publish it, I hope that it will stand the test of time in the sense that it will enjoy the respect and the commitment right across the country, lots of different sectors. And if we do that, notwithstanding the uncertainties of Brexit over the months ahead, we will at least, as a country and as a nation, have been able to look to the future, have agreed a sense of what we need to do to have a prosperous future in terms of the policy decisions that we can make, that we will do so in a way that lives within our means, that will create good jobs, that will maintain high standards, that will create an environment in which you can invest in the future. And as I said at the beginning, if we do that, then I hope in the years ahead that your contribution, your essential contribution to the success of the UK economy will be as worthy of thanks in the future as it is today. Thank you very much indeed.